guys? Welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price. Now, before I even get into this review, for those of you who've seen this film already, is it really a surprise to any of you that this whole thing came to pass because of Spike Lee? Tales from the Hood. Tales from the Hood is a 1995 horror anthology film. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term anthology, if you were like me and you grew up in the 90s and you watched like Tales from the Crypt and Are You Afraid of the Dark, that's an anthology. It's a TV show or a movie or what have you where instead of it being one long narrative that's followed all through the storyline, instead it's kind of like a collection of short stories. If it's a TV show, it's usually that each episode is its own story and they don't really flow together. Or if it's a movie, in the case of Tales from the Hood, it could be like, I mean, there's a bunch of these today. There's a bunch of these anthologies. I just watched one about a week ago that I didn't really care for that was called The Dark Tapes. But if you've seen like the VHS films, or if you've seen like the original Tales from the Crypt involved with horror from the 70s, or even like Twilight Zone the movie, or Twilight Zone the show. That's what an anthology is. It's a collection of shorts. Now, this film came out in 95, and like a bunch of movies that I've reviewed that came out in the 90s, I want to remind you all, I was a kid when this came out, so I didn't see it for the first time for a number of years after it originally was released. I wasn't lucky enough to be able to see this movie in the theater, although I would have loved to. I would have loved to have seen this movie with an audience who had never seen it before, because it's a great reaction film. The basic storyline, which I'll refer to as the wraparound, because that's generally what one refers to these as, the wraparound story for Tales from the Hood revolves around three kind of thugs who are coming in, and they're going into a mortuary because the mortician, the guy who runs the mortuary, says that, I found some drugs, and I'll sell them to you. And the mortician is out there, man. He's really out there. The mortician's name is Mr. Sims. Sims is played by Clarence Williams III, who is a very famous African-American actor who I've seen in a number of other films, and was also, I believe, in the old TV show The Mod Squad. I could be wrong about that, but I believe he was. Anyway, he's leading these three punk kids through this house, and, every time they pass a coffin or so, he stops to tell them a story about this body and how the person died, and so you get your four short horror stories. The first story is about an African-American rookie police officer who witnesses three other cops brutally beat a civil rights leader, and he tries to stop them, but he doesn't really try, and they kind of bully him into backing off, and they end up killing this civil rights leader. And then a year later, this rookie cop, who's now disgraced and has left the force, leads them back to the cemetery where the civil rights leader is buried, and then you get this fun kind of zombie film. And it's this first short is fun, but at the same time it's really kind of a cliche. It's the one that above all else really feels kind of like a Tales from the Crypt short. It really feels like a typical zombie revenge story, and I'm really grateful that it's the first story because it's definitely the one of the four stories that has the least imagination to it. The second story is about a young boy who is put in a new school, and his teacher becomes very disturbed when this boy comes in day after day with these different bruises and cuts and stuff, and he asks the boy, well, what is the problem? What's causing this? And he starts to think, well, is it abuse at home, or is it another kid picking on him? But this boy tells him, no, the bruises and the cuts, all these injuries come from a monster that lives in his house, that comes to visit him at night. And this is a really creepy story. This is actually my favorite of the four because there's a lot of imagination to it, and it's all about how a child sees the world, and about how what makes sense to an 8 or 9-year-old, how it would make sense to an adult, where the translation is there. And this is the one story that I think has the most to say also in terms of the kind of social commentary that kind of permeates all the different shorts in this film. Also in the second short, look out for the director of the film, Rusty Cundiff, as the teacher, as the boy's teacher. I didn't realize until recently watching the film that the actor playing this character was in fact the director. Usually I'm pretty good about things like that, but I didn't catch that about this film until recently. The third short is a kind of racial spin on the old Zuni Doll kind of thing from the old trilogy of terror movies. It's got this ex-Klan member who's running for office, and he buys this house in the South and kind of pisses off all African Americans there. This house was a former slave plantation, and he ends up kind of being terrorized by these little dolls that legend says carry the souls of the slaves that used to live on this plantation. Now, it may seem like I'm giving away a lot telling what each individual story is about. I prefer to if I'm describing an anthology to someone, because I don't like to go into an anthology myself not having an idea of what the stories are or what the point is. I kind of like having a synopsis and being shocked by whatever twists the story throws in, because like the old EC comics and like the Twilight Zone and Tales from the Crypt, all of these horror shorts tend to have twist endings, and it's fun to try to guess it ahead of time, and if you're right, you're right, and you get to say you were right. If you're wrong, it's always kind of a pleasant surprise, like they pull the rug out from under you and it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. With Tales from the Hood altogether, I do feel like it's kind of half and half. Like, you'll probably see the twists of one or two of them coming, but not the other one or two. It kind of just depends on you and, just how clever you are and how well-versed you are in the horror genre. The fourth and final story is about a gang member who is arrested after shooting a couple of people, and he's kind of offered this experimental reform technique. It's very Clockwork Orange. It's very Clockwork Orange. And, of course, this experimental technique could be described by many as a variety of psychological tortures that this guy has to endure, that they're going to hopefully break him of his criminal tendencies. Kind of like the first one, this didn't have a lot of surprises for me. I found that even though the concept is still interesting, even though it's already kind of been done, that this one kind of puts a hat on a hat. You already know by this point in the film that all these horror stories have a racial spin. Even the title, Tales from the Hood, Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Hood, you kind of get that there's supposed to be undertones and themes of racism and gang violence and stuff like that throughout these stories. This one comes off as kind of preachy, at least I think it does. Not going to say it's bad, but it does come off as preachy. And the way it kind of ties in to the wraparound, the end of the film, is kind of clever. But at the same time, and that's going to bring me to the end of the film, which I'm not going to ruin for you, but it does end in a traditional horror anthology sense, where now the mortician Sims, who's been telling these kids these stories, turns out to be more than what he is, yada yada. Once again, it sounds like a spoiler, but if you've ever seen a movie like this, you already know that these things are coming. You know the cliches, you know the kind of structure that horror anthologies tend to take. Tales from the Hood, I think, is one of the best horror anthologies I've ever seen. Not every story hits home the way that I think they wanted it to, but you can say that about any anthology that's ever been made. They're not all gonna be gold. If every day is a sunny day, then what's a sunny day? But I really think that a lot of what makes Tales from the Hood work is, other than Clarence Williams III, because he's hilarious. I'm going to interject, I'm going to kind of digress for a second. Clarence Williams III is so funny in this movie. He kind of does a cross between like Rod Serling in The Twilight Zone and The Crypt Keeper, where, once you find out kind of what his deal is at the end of the film, it kind of makes a little sense just how kooky he gets. But a lot of his material and how he interacts with the gang is just really amusing to me. Like, here, I'll give you guys this clip to check out, see if you can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we got the money, old man.
Whoa, 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 whoa. You get it when we get the shit.
The shit. The shit. The drugs. You get the drugs, then I get the money.
Okay.
Yes. The shit. The drugs. Yeah. The shit. I like that. That's just hilarious. I don't know what it is about Clarence Williams in this movie, but that's funny to me. That's hilarious to me. Especially in this sense. I don't even want to say that that's like dark comedy, but I love that he just kind of is almost condescending to these kids in a way. And I don't know. There's something about his performance that's just absolutely magnetic. I don't know if Tales from the Hood, if it would be what it is without Clarence Williams III in that role. Getting back to what I was saying, though, I think that Tales from the Hood is one of the best horror anthologies out there. And, at the time, it had a lot of social relevance to it. Boys in the Hood had just come out. There were a lot of these movies. Poetic Justice set it off that were coming out that were about African Americans overcoming adversity in some way, shape, or form. And this film, unfortunately, when it first came out, all the kind of trailers and advertisements, and you can go on YouTube and look up trailers and TV spots for Tales from the Hood, it was kind of made out to be this kind of goofy, ridiculous horror movie. And I think that a lot of people passed on it. It wasn't really successful because of that. And when you watch it, you see kind of how clever a lot of the stories are and how well they mix kind of the real-life horrors that African Americans face every day, with the supernatural aspects, and I really wish that more people would see this movie and appreciate it for what it is. Tales from the Hood gets 3.5 stars, which is probably the best rating I'm ever going to give an anthology horror film, because like I said, I don't think I've at least ever seen an anthology where I thought every short worked. But this movie comes really close. And even if one or two of the shorts are a little lacking in my mind, there's enough imagination and enough to talk about after you see this movie that I really do think that it's worth a look for anyone who's interested in horror, especially horror anthologies. That's my review of Tales from the Hood. Stay tuned, I got a lot more of these reviews coming. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.